Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to a special Friday the 13th edition of NoDQ&A video right here on NoDQ.com, as well as the YouTube channel and NoDQ&A videos affiliate ringsidenews.com. I was hoping to do a video yesterday, but I was a little bit too busy shoveling snow here in Portland, Oregon. It was crazy, over a foot of snow in Portland. But enough of that. Got your questions regarding the Royal Rumble and other topics, so let's get started today. First one comes from Alex Boney. Who do you think will take over as Mick Foley's role as GM once he is done? There's currently a lot of speculation about Mick Foley's future. There's been the talk about him having hip surgery and being gone for a while, in which case one would think that somebody would end up replacing him as the GM. I suppose Stephanie could just be the authority figure, but to me that's boring. I think if Foley is going to be gone, you should have somebody fill in and replace him as the general manager. Now, who would that person be? Brother? Maybe Hulk Hogan? Never say never. He would seem to be a potential candidate, although I'm not sure if WWE will be that quick to bring him back in a prominent role. They might want to start off slow with him, have him just do public appearances before bringing him back on television on a full-time basis. Maybe Ric Flair, that might be another possibility. Maybe somebody like DDP, who is strongly rumored to be going into the Hall of Fame. There are a lot of different possibilities. I think DDP would be awesome. I'd love to see DDP on Raw every week in a GM role and doing the whole Positively Page thing and teaching people yoga. That would be a lot of fun, actually. So I think there are a lot of different things WWE could do with the GM role. It's just a matter of finding somebody who's available and somebody who's passionate about wanting to do it. Maybe DDP's too busy with other things, who knows? But I think somebody like Hulk Hogan would probably jump at the chance to be the GM if they rang him up and asked him to do it. Next one comes from Chris. Hey Aaron, I just rewatched Cactus Jack's return from 2000, one of Mick Foley's best promos. What's your favorite Foley promo? I remember that one that was really good when Foley got beat up as Mankind and then the next week came back as Cactus Jack. That was a really strong one. Of course, the classic ECW Kane Dewey promo. He had a lot of good ones in ECW. And I think my all-time favorite Mick Foley promo, I mean, it was him on the mic. It was the This Is Your Life, even though it was more of a skit than an actual promo. Foley and The Rock had tremendous chemistry together. You know what? My all-time favorite promo had to be when The Rock had just won the WWE title. I think this was June or July of 2000, and Mick Foley was the commissioner. And Foley used The Rock's own "It doesn't matter how you feel" on him. And then he started high-fiving people running around the ring. That was just such a classic moment. And The Rock even lost his composure and started laughing. I mean, to me, that was just one of the all-time greatest segments in Raw history. I think a lot of people forget about that one. Look it up if you can. It was somewhere around June, July. Foley and The Rock in-ring promo. Foley congratulating The Rock. But yeah, there were so many classic Mick Foley promos over the years. It would be hard to just pick one. And you know, that interview he did with Jim Ross where he ended up putting the mandible claw on JR, that was another classic promo. Just so many, countless ones. Funny ones, serious ones. Foley always did a tremendous job. The one he did with Edge right before he left in 2008 to hype up the Hell in a Cell match, that one was really good. Just so many. I cannot pick one. It's just impossible. Next one comes from Beast Slayer. What are your thoughts on the breaking news of Mark Hunt suing Brock Lesnar and the UFC? Not really surprised at all. I think something like this was inevitable. Mark Hunt has been very vocal about Lesnar failing the drug tests and getting paid all that money. If I was Mark Hunt, I would probably try to get as much money as possible out of this. I would potentially take legal action as well. I mean, from his perspective, there's a lot of money there to potentially gain from suing Brock Lesnar and the UFC. Now, there's the whole question of Lesnar and if that really played a role in the outcome of the fight and when he actually was on the substance. There's a lot of different things that would need to be proven in order for Mark Hunt to be awarded damages. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, if there'll be some sort of settlement or what will happen. Lesnar's victory over Hunt was already overturned. We'll see if things continue to escalate further and look bad for Brock Lesnar. Time will tell. I mean, right now there's still a lot of questions and it's in the early stages, so we'll see where it goes. Got this one here from Dave Lesnar. What do you think of Rick Rude headlining this year's Hall of Fame with DDP, Vader, Shaq as the celebrity, and China? Strong enough? Right now, Vader is not a sure thing, Shaq is not a sure thing, China's not a sure thing. The names I've heard rumored are Christian and the Natural Disasters and IRS, in addition to DDP and Rick Rude. Now, I think Rick Rude is an excellent choice. I mean, he is long overdue to go into the Hall of Fame. Of all the deceased WWE superstars, Rude's right at the top. He has to be at the top of the biggest stars not to go into the Hall of Fame yet, based off of what he did in WWE and then going to WCW and having a great run there, and then of course showing up on Nitro the same night he was on the taped Raw. That was an all-time classic moment. But Rick Rude was just such a great in-ring performer, great character, and a great promo. I mean, when he was in WCW, he did this segment on Nitro where he was yelling at the announcers, Tony Schiavone, Mike Tenay, and Bobby Heenan, and he was so damn good in that segment. It was December of, December of 1997, one of those Nitros. I guess the lights went out and Rude was yelling at the announcers and threatening them. Rude was just tremendous, excellent talker, and just overall, when you look at all the attributes, Rude was one of the greatest performers of his era. So he definitely deserves to go in, and you know, a lot of people would say China, but I do not see WWE inducting too many deceased superstars in 1 year. They might do 2, but I think it's a long shot they do more than one major name that is deceased going into the Hall of Fame. And Shaq, I mean, I could see that happening with him potentially. I mean, I'm expecting the WrestleMania match. I mean, Big Show continues to tease it. Shaq just posted a video. So, you know, if Shaq's going to do a match at WrestleMania, him going into the Hall of Fame in Orlando makes a lot of sense. I could very well see that happening. Got this one here from Steampunk Celt. Of WWE's current big men, such as Braun Strowman and Baron Corbin, who do you see as having the highest ceiling? Interesting question. I think when you look at guys with pure ability and raw potential, I might go with Baron Corbin over Braun Strowman. I mean, Braun Strowman is being protected to a very large degree. Somebody like Baron Corbin, time will tell if he can recover from a loss to John Cena. Corbin hasn't been booked nearly as strongly as Strowman. Corbin has been in the pre-show matches and he's gotten pushed a bit. He's been put in some main event matches, but Strowman has had the booking machine way behind him. So it's really hard to compare the two of them. If Corbin got Strowman's push, I think he might be able to do even better than how Strowman has been doing. I mean, it's really hard to say, but I would give the slight edge to Corbin at this stage of the game. And of course, Big Cass is another guy on the list, a guy who has a lot of potential, but I also feel like Enzo is the one that's stealing the show, and without Enzo, Cass is not quite as strong of a performer. And time will tell how well he does once he's on his own, if he can really take it to the next level. I mean, when he's got Enzo out there who has a ton of charisma, basically carrying things, you know, Cass is good in the ring, but I think he hasn't really shown a lot in terms of his mic work. I mean, he's basically just memorizing his lines and doing the 7 foot tall and you can't teach that, and you know, there's one word to describe you, I'm going to spell it out for you. You know, the usual shtick. Whereas Enzo is coming up with all sorts of different things and doing 90% of the promo work. Next one comes from Ali. Are you excited for the Royal Rumble match this year? The match itself is stacked for the first time in years. I'm definitely excited for it more than previous years, more than last year. I was very worried about last year after 2014 and 2015. I think WWE has learned their lesson, and I'm expecting a fan favorite to win the Royal Rumble, whether it's Jericho or Undertaker. And yeah, it's a very star-studded Rumble. No Roman Reigns, which is good. You got Brock in there. You got Goldberg. You got Seth Rollins. You have Dolph Ziggler. A lot of big names in this Rumble. It's definitely one of the more star-studded Rumbles, and it is in the Alamo Dome, which adds some extra interest and intrigue about the pay-per-view to see how things play out in that big, giant stadium. And also AJ Styles versus John Cena I'm very curious about. I'm curious about Owens versus Reigns, how WWE is going to handle that. Is Roman Reigns going to become Universal Champion, or is Jericho in that cage going to somehow be able to cost Reigns, or will he accidentally cost Owens? So there is a little bit more unpredictability for this year's Royal Rumble than I think in previous years, which is always a good thing. When you're not able to really tell for sure what's going to happen. Although I still think, as far as the Rumble winner goes, there's only 2 or 3 guys that are real serious contenders at this point. Next one comes from JT. Hey Aaron, my question is, with WrestleMania 33 coming up, what are the top 3 matches that you would like to see? Well, I would love to see AJ Styles versus Finn Balor. I'm really hoping Balor can return in time for WrestleMania. I'd love to see that be a high-profile match, Raw versus SmackDown. You would think they would have a Raw versus SmackDown match at WrestleMania. It only makes sense to do that. I mean, if you're going to do it a few times a year, WrestleMania would be one of the places. AJ and Balor, they would tear the house down. That would be a tremendous match, and you know, with it being Raw versus SmackDown, it would have some importance behind it. Another match is Money in the Bank. I believe it's SmackDown that's getting the Money in the Bank pay-per-view in July, so why not let the Raw guys have a Money in the Bank match at WrestleMania? I mean, I've missed it. I've missed the Money in the Bank matches at WrestleMania. Those matches helped elevate WrestleMania. So I'm hoping we'll see that. And then, of course, John Cena versus The Undertaker. I mean, I've been talking about it for the longest time, and I hope they go through with it finally before it's too late. Got this one here from #BanksClub. I've personally always preferred Daniel Bryan as a heel. How do you feel about him being a heel GM? Daniel Bryan was a great heel, no question about it. He could definitely play the role well despite being a small guy, but I think him being a heel GM would not work now. I think it's virtually impossible to get fans to boo the guy. I mean, I just don't see that working. And I don't see the point. Just because he's a good heel doesn't mean he should be a heel. Same thing with Ric Flair back in WCW. Flair was one of the best heels ever in professional wrestling, but by 1999, fans did not want to see Flair in that role. And when he turned heel and did the double turn with Hogan, business started to tank because nobody wanted to see Ric Flair as a heel at that stage of the game. Now, it's not like Bryan turning heel would cause WWE business to collapse or anything, but it's just not necessary. It's not what people want to see. I honestly don't think the majority of WWE fans want to see Daniel Bryan as a heel character, even though he's good at it. They just don't want to see it. I mean, Steve Austin was a tremendous heel, but fans did not want to see him as a heel when he turned at WrestleMania 17. There's just, sometimes a guy is not in the right place to be a heel, even if he's good in that role. I mean, it just depends. And once you're in that legend status like a Daniel Bryan, it's really hard to get the fans to boo for you. Next one comes from Dead Autumn. Are Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Kevin Owens huge draws for Raw, or are they contributing to the low ratings? Nobody's really a draw. I mean, that is the nature of WWE in 2017. There is no Steve Austin or Rock or even somebody at John Cena's level besides John Cena. Nobody is at that level. Everyone is pretty much here at an even playing field in terms of drawing power. Reigns has had the corporate machine behind him, and yeah, he does sell some merchandise. Not as much as John Cena, but he is selling merchandise. He's still not at that level, though, of one of the all-time biggest draws. Nobody's really a draw because you have the 50-50 booking, and WWE just hasn't been able to go all the way with a guy and have that guy be accepted by the majority of fans. You know, Roman Reigns, a lot of fans booed him, and there was a big backlash over Roman Reigns. Daniel Bryan, the fans were behind, but then he got hurt. CM Punk, the fans were behind, but he quit. So there were a few guys that were at the cusp of being at that level, but for whatever reason, it just didn't work out. So, you know, with the ratings, I think a lot of that is just due to the fact that the television shows are not all that compelling. That's the first thing. And then, yeah, the other thing is WWE doesn't have that Steve Austin or Rock level superstar to really draw in the viewers. Got this one here from hashtag I'm with 54. So, Omega versus blank for Mania. Please answer in video. I know it's not likely, but why not? I think it is very unlikely that Kenny Omega ends up in WWE right away unless he's able to get out of his New Japan deal. I'm not sure what's going on with that. I've heard that it expires the end of January, but there are some reports that he's sticking around at least through March. It seems to me like a long shot right now that he does end up in WWE, at least in the short term, right away. If he was at WrestleMania, let's just say for argument's sake, WWE did sign him, and he was at WrestleMania, I'd love to see Omega versus AJ Styles. I mean, if Balor was not available, Omega would be a great choice. There are a lot of guys you could put him in there with. I mean, Seth Rollins. I mean, take your pick. Any of the top guys, I think Kenny Omega would have a great match with. I also realistically don't see WWE putting him in a really high-profile match, though, right away. I mean, with AJ, AJ was in TNA, so there were some American wrestling fans that were familiar with AJ. With Omega, I mean, not as many fans are going to be familiar with him if and when he does debut in WWE. Yes, there are some American fans that watch New Japan Pro Wrestling and follow the indies, but with AJ, I mean, he was TNA's biggest star for several years, and for a while, TNA had some momentum on national television with Spike TV, which is gone now. So AJ was a bigger American star than Kenny Omega, and I think that would play a factor in Omega not being pushed quite as strongly as AJ was when he debuted. So if Omega, let's say he does debut soon, I think they would probably put him in a lower card match at WrestleMania. Maybe throw him in Money in the Bank. And I'm sure some fans would complain about that, you know, saying this guy had the 6-star match against Okada, he should be in the main event at WrestleMania. I think it's very unlikely that would happen, even if Omega did sign with WWE in the near future. This one comes from Paul Bessman. What was the bigger main event WrestleMania miss? Triple H versus The Rock in 2000 or Hogan versus Flair at WrestleMania 8? Why and how would you book each? Great question. I mean, that's really hard to say. It's two different eras. I mean, Triple H and The Rock, that should have been the WrestleMania main event, but it wasn't the end of the world because there were many other opportunities to do that match. But Hogan and Flair in the WWF in 1992, they missed it, and then we never got to see it ever. At least we got to see Triple H and The Rock many times before that WrestleMania and then after that WrestleMania. I would say Hogan and Flair. I mean, that would have been unbelievable, a true dream match in Hogan's prime during his first WWF run to see him go up against Ric Flair at WrestleMania. That would have been huge, but I guess the house show numbers were a bit disappointing, and Vince figured that Sid Justice would be a bigger draw against Hulk Hogan than Ric Flair. You know, that's Vince going back to that idea that the bigger guy is the bigger draw. So Vince went with Sid Justice as Hogan's opponent, which was not nearly as strong, even though it did make for some very entertaining television, especially when Sid was on the barber shop and got the powder in his face. I mean, that was a scary-ass promo. And Sid's reaction when Hogan was announced as the #1 contender. Sid did a great job, but I really wanted to see Hogan versus Flair. Huge missed opportunity, or as Trump would say, huge. So, yeah, I would go with Hogan and Flair, definitely. Got this one here from Garrett Mills. In your opinion, what was the worst year in the post-Attitude Era WWE in terms of storylines and pay-per-views? That's a tough one to say. I mean, in terms of storylines, probably 2015. In terms of pay-per-views, worst post-Attitude Era year, probably 2004. I thought was pretty weak, just because of the brand exclusive pay-per-views, and I felt SmackDown had gotten a bit weak by that point, despite Eddie being a top star and Benoit being a top star on Raw. I just felt that the pay-per-views were fairly weak. I remember a lot of bad matches and WWE bringing in guys like Mordecai and Kenzo Suzuki, and you had Snitsky on Raw. So yeah, the matches I thought on the pay-per-views were pretty weak, at least the undercards were, in 2004. And then of course storyline-wise, 2015 was pretty damn awful. That'll do it for NoDQ&A video. Thanks as always for watching. Stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest regarding the Rumble, and I will see you guys next time.